Welcome to another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement. I am here at the News Forum where all voices matter. I'm pleased to welcome back Dr. Marco Navarro-Genie to talk about Cuba. He is the president of the Haltain Institute at the University of Calgary, and the timing could not be better. Welcome back, Marco.
Thank you very much, Tony. It's good to be here.
Yeah, of course. It's great to have you as always. You wrote recently that Cuba's collapse won't look like what we expect. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Uh, yes, I was trying to address what some people think is going to be essentially a dramatic collapse, the likes of, say, the fall of the Berlin Wall. And we all remember the Berlin Wall. It was such a dramatic event. But what we forget is that the collapse of the Berlin Wall didn't just happen overnight,
Mm.
that it was essentially an accumulated set of things, failures, system failures of centralized economies that eventually led to that. And so we should be careful because I think the precedent in forcing the hand at the moment since the beginning of the year is sort of expecting as well, the president of the United States, I mean, that Cuba will collapse all of a sudden. And that is not the pattern that these sort of revolutionary, hard-nosed regimes have exhibited.
And we'll delve into that a little bit more. But first, maybe for the benefit of our audience, can you explain the current situation in Cuba?
Certainly, the current situation is very dire. We have gone essentially, especially in the last couple of weeks, from a situation of crisis to a situation of emergency. Over the last 60 years, people know Cuba has had this revolutionary government, but it's a revolutionary government that has never really stood on its own 2 feet, that it has always relied on external benefactors. And the last benefactor that it had, Venezuela, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, um, has basically also collapsed under its own weight. And so Cuba now needs somewhere in the order of 120,000 barrels of oil a day. It doesn't have that. Before Venezuela collapsed, Tony, there were blackouts in Cuba on a daily basis, and
Right.
people would get 4 hours of electricity at the most, maybe six. Now there are periods in which certain parts of the country have had no electricity for 48, sometimes 72 hours all at once. It's impossible to run a country. All the universities have been closed. Hospitals have no supplies. There is no electricity to run, for example, operating rooms in hospitals.
Hmm.
And as in typically happens in these kinds of regimes, the scant resources are being used to keep the center, to hold the center whole, which is the military. So it is a situation now in which we see images that people smuggle out of the country, in which people are now going through trash cans. There is trash everywhere because it's not getting picked up. There's no fuel to run basic services,
Mm.
and so it's turned into a situation of emergency.
And again, as an explainer, the United States has sanctioned Cuba, which includes removing from Cuban trade the oil and gas that they were getting from Venezuela prior to the Maduro government.
Yes, and not only they are not getting oil from Venezuela, the United States has wagged its finger at Mexico, who was also sending fuel to Cuba and stop that. Of course, there is a market out there that remains for Cuba to go and fetch oil, but they don't have the hard currency to pay for it, especially since, given the collapse of the electrical grid, there is no way to accommodate the tourism industry. And the tourism industry was one of the lifelines of the regime. It's,
Mhm.
$3.5 billion coming in, much of which was supplied by Canadians, by the way. And so we've seen pictures in the newspapers and in the media of stranded tourists in Cuba from Canada, lots of Russians as well. And they couldn't get them out
Right.
because there was no fuel for the planes to leave. So it's
We're
been
going to have
very,
to
very
leave it at
difficult.
that. We're going to take a brief break, Marco. We'll be back with you after these messages.